for the power to the boreholes for water. It's part of our focus. It's part of our viewer question this morning. We've been forced to do it for ourselves. Or communities have even been filling potholes and building bridges. The potholes are a whole separate issue. We'll get into that in a moment. I'll tell you why, because you can get yourself into a bit of trouble if you are actually filling potholes. How fair is that? So there is a failure at a government level. Let's bring in Thami Ngubane from the SA Local Government Association. You'll know the acronym probably better. It's SALGA. Thami, morning to you. And do you feel that we have to do it for ourselves because government just has no idea how to get on top of our infrastructure issues? Good morning.
Morning to you and your viewers. Thanks for providing me an opportunity to come and shine some light on the causality, because everything that happens has a causality. I think more, if you look at the performance of the infrastructure, which must produce some output to the people, most of the problem are coming from the mistakes of commission and mistake of omission. There are things that we should be doing that are not done. There are things that should be done that are not done, and so on and so forth. But in the main, we must look at the system. The system, any system that provides service or product, it has inputs that must be processed into a particular output. So if we are not happy with the service or the goods as an output, it means we need to trace it back from the inputs, if they're adequate and they are also efficiently processed.
The problem is, though, Thami, is that the blame is often shifted for something that isn't being done correctly. Let's say, for example, it's the water issues. It's the city blaming Rand Water. Rand Water is blaming the city. Then they're blaming each other for pressure problems. Then it's infrastructure problems. Then it's overusage. And as regular South Africans, we don't get involved with trying to have those conversations with those in power. So how do we as citizens actually try and change this? Because we can't go and knock on the mayor's door and tell them to do the job. Believe me, we try. But as an ordinary citizen, we can't change that. So what do ordinary South Africans do to fix this?
Yes, as I've said before, that immediately you correctly diagnose the problem, we are almost halfway to solving it. So more often than not, you'll find that there are two capitals that must serve as an input. The first capital is the human capital. There's a problem in terms of the public sector, in terms of the technical skills. There's a deficit in terms of the technical skills, which then impact the ability of the system to produce services. In the case of water, we expect in terms of people where they stay and where people are working, they expect clean water, clean, fresh, and pure water provided over 24 hours at a right price. And it's not happening. Why? It's because there's a technical skills deficit. So the people who are there are not fit and pop.
How does SALGA help in this situation? How does SALGA help in this situation?
Our view is that we must have a conversation with those people whom we expect to supply us with the skills. The education system is not rising to the occasion. There's a weak education and training system, which is then impeding on the development of skilled professionals. As a result, the system therefore does not get the input that it requires. And the absence of the technical skill impact on the value chain, whether you talk about planning, whether you talk about the design, and also the care of infrastructure. if the engineers are not there, the whole value chain will be impacted.
How much of a difference can a local government do? Not necessarily your association, Thami, but local government. We're talking councillors, we're talking mayors, for example. Give me a sense of how much of a difference they can actually make when it comes to having those conversations. Do you feel that they've got the power to escalate our infrastructure issues?
Yes, it is our understanding that there is one government with different spheres. And even the DDM concept is trying to ensure that all of us, we sit under one roof and plan how are we going to actually transform the spaces where people are living. So in terms of ensuring that we provide the service of water effectively and efficiently, the Department of Education, the basic and higher, they've got a role to play because they must produce skilled professionals. So we believe that we can actually achieve that. But again, on the human capital, there's also another problem of us as politicians. There seems to be a very poor attitude towards maintenance. After cutting the ribbon, there are many mistakes that we commit. Our attitude, there's a poor attitude towards maintenance. So when
do you think that poor attitude, Thami, comes from the fact that politicians live in a different world to the rest of us? Do you think that's why they don't understand how serious these issues are? Because politicians earn a lot of money, they have security, their homes have power, their homes have running water. They live in a bubble. They don't understand our reality. Is that a fair critique?
No, it's an unfair critique. Because we are there in the space, we'll be able to shine the light on the problem. The problem is the conflict between the old infrastructure and the new infrastructure. The government is normally elected by population that reside in areas that were not serviced before 1994. So the people in those communities, they are poor and they don't have infrastructure. So in terms of us as politicians, we prioritize investing in building new infrastructure to facilitate access and deal with the backlog. And in the process, neglect the need of the existing infrastructure. That is the mismatch. It's not because we're living in a bubble. It's because when we go to the office, we've got 5 years. Whether we come back or not will be determined the extent to which we have extended the access to the service. So that's why we build more infrastructure, new infrastructure, and in the process, neglect the needs of the old infrastructure in terms of maintenance and also refurbishment in time.
Let me ask you this just very briefly in closing, Thami, because I understand your point. I do take your point, Thami. Let me just ask you this in closing. Which infrastructure issue keeps you up at night? Roads, water, electricity? Give me an answer as I say goodbye to you very briefly.
Well, basically everything, because you can't separate the water, the electricity, the roads. They all form part of what we call foundational services. So people where they live, people where they work, they need these as foundational services. But another problem is the inadequate funding. You see, municipalities are expected to be financially viable, but there are no economic nodes in most of these rural areas. They were neglected by apartheid. There are no economic nodes. Therefore, people can't get any form of income. But in terms of the system, the municipalities are expected to be financially viable. You go to the grants that are being allocated from the national pairs are also inadequate, because some of the assumption that municipalities were going to be self-sufficient in terms of the user pay mechanism is not coming, not because of the attitude.
So you're telling me as Salga, what keeps you up at night is all the infrastructure. It's not just one thing, Thami. It's all the infrastructure, which is, as you say, a bit of a mess at the moment. New infrastructure coming in, but we're not maintaining the old infrastructure.